Yam pravrajantam anupetam apeta krityam dvaipayana virahakatarajuha putreti tam mayatayo tarao vinedus tam sarvabhuta hridayam munimanatusmi. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Prayers by Queen Kunti, Text 46. Vyasa adhyai Ishvara Iha Gyai Krishnena Adbhuta Karmana Prabodhitaha Api Itihasaihi Na Abudhyata Sucha Arpitaha Vyasadyar Ishvare Gyai Vyasadyar Ishvare Gyai Krishnenad Bhuta Karmana Krishnenad Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Prabodhito Piti Hasair Prabodhito Piti Hasair Nabudyata Sucharpitaha Nabudyata Sucharpitaha Vyasadyar Ishvare Hagyai Krishnenad Bhuta Karmana Prabodhito Piti Hasair Nabudyata Sucharpitaha. Translation. King Yudhisthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced despite instructions by great sages, headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performance of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Prabhupada. The pious King Yudhisthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana was there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration. And in one sense, there was no need of fighting. But on the principle of justice, Yudhisthira was to replace him. The whole clique of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival brothers. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhisthira. It is said that in the Mahabharata Adi Parva that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the battle of Kurukshetra, and some hundreds of thousands were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within the 5,000 years. This mass killing simply to enthrone Maharaja Yudhisthira was too mortifying, so he tried to be convinced with evidence from histories by the great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. The cause was just. But Maharaja Yudhisthira would not be convinced, would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as the performer of superhuman actions. But in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King King Yudhisthira. Does it mean that he failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord as Ishvara, or the Supersoul, in the hearts of both King Yudhisthira and Vyasa performed still more superhuman action because the Lord desired it. As Supersoul, the King Yudhisthira, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyasa and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhishma, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhishma see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhisthira, etc., now situated on the throne and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhishma was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhisthira be pacified by the words of Bhishma, so that the world could see that Bhishma excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vyasadhyari svare hadhyai Krishnanad bhutakarmana prabodhito piti hasai Nabudhyata sucharpita. King Yudhisthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by great sages headed by Vyasa and the Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutare Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Srimati Paschatyadesh Tarine Vanchakalpatarabhishya Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ajanuvandita Bhujogana Kavadata Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamala Daksha Vishwam Parodvichavaro Yugadharma Bhava Vande Jagat Priya Karo Karana Avatar Yandah Pravishya Mama Vachimama Prasuktam Sanjeevayata Kila Shakti Darak Swadamna Anyam Shahasta Charana Shravana Tvagadi Anandamo Bhagavate Purushaya. So we're reading this first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the whole first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is describing the adhikar tattva, the qualification for hearing, speaking, and understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. Because to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, one has to have certain qualifications. And if we analyze very thoroughly the stories which are there in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will see that they all fit into this plot. From the very beginning, the qualification of Shaunaka Rishi as the main hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sutta Goswami was described. Then Narada Muni and Vyasadeva, there is another Srimad Bhagavatam between them was described, and in the meantime their qualification is defined, and ultimately the highest possible hearer and speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami and Maharaja Parikshit, their qualification is being described. So in this part of the first canto, the basically this whole last section of many chapters, starting from the 8th chapter or even 7th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam till the end, the qualification of the hearer, Maharaja Parikshit is being described. Through his ancestry, through his lineage, and through his own personal qualifications, through his life. It's interesting that a qualification of Shukadeva Goswami is described very briefly. Even though it is mentioned that he was very renounced and he was completely absorbed in the bliss of Brahman, still he was attached to the Krishna Katha, to hearing about Krishna. But then the qualification of hearer, Maharaja Parikshit, is much more elaborately described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because for us it's more important to understand how we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam. What should be our qualification to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, so that the ultimate success of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam will come to our life. Because ultimate success of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is love of Godhead. And it's not that easy. Love of Godhead is a very high achievement. But if we hear properly, if the hearing is done in a proper way and in a proper mood, with the proper qualification, then definitely, there's no doubt about it, love of Godhead will come to our heart. And here in this particular chapter and in the next chapter, it's very interesting. Before describing the life of Maharaja Parikshit and his qualifications, his lineage is described, and these side stories, so to speak, they contribute very much to understand this subject matter. Because basically, if we see the prayers of Queen Kunti, the prayers of Queen Kunti describe how one should live in this world and how one should pray during his life. And then the next chapter, prayers of Bhishma Dev, or passing away of Bhishma Dev, describe how one should die in this world and what about one should pray during his death. But in the beginning, of course, we should know how one should live. Queen Kunti in her prayers illustrates this, how the life should be, all the difficult events of our life, and everyone's life is difficult. Maybe not as difficult as Queen Kunti's life, but still, sometimes people, being very enthusiastic neophyte devotees, they say, they pray with Queen Kunti, "Oh, my Lord, send difficulties in my life, please, so that I could remember about you." No need to pray. They will come anyways. Don't worry. The point is not difficult. The point is to remember about the Lord during the difficulties, which is not guaranteed when the difficulties come. And of course, and she describes very beautifully her prayer. The prayer of your heart is that in these difficulties, please help me to remember about you. Please let my consciousness always flow towards you without any cessation. And that's the perfection of the life, because we know that there are so many distractions in life. When we have stressful situation, or when we have happy situation, we forget about the Lord very easily. There is so much stress there, and we have to remember about so many things. And there is hardly any time to remember about the Lord. Even when we chant Hare Krishna mantra, somehow or other we conveniently forget about the Lord. We chant His name, but we don't remember about Him. There is no consciousness invested into this chanting. And that's the biggest problem which we have. So she is explaining to us what should be the desire of our heart. Usually we pray to the Lord, give us this, give us that, improve this situation, make me healthy, make me wealthy, make me, bring me husband or wife, and then help me to divorce them. And, so many prayers are there, all the time. It's good to, at least we have some excuses to remember about Him, but in reality, the prayer should be, help me to remember about you all the time. Help my consciousness to flow towards you without any break or sensation. That should be the prayer. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And then, of course, if we do this, then the glorious death is awaiting for us. Usually death is not a very glorious event. It's a very sad event. Because still there are so many attachments and it's so difficult. And first and foremost, the attachment towards the body, it's so strong. But we can see this in the next chapter, the description of glorious death of Bhishma, who was absolutely not attached. And actually to describe his glory, Lord Krishna himself wanted to stress or to announce to the whole world the glory of Bhishma through this pastime with Maharaja Yudhisthira. So this whole arrangement of the Lord is very interesting. There are many elements of this story which are quite interesting. First of all, it is said that Maharaja Yudhisthira could not be pacified by anyone. Vyasadeva was there, and Vyasadeva was telling him different stories. And Narada Muni was there, and Narada Muni was trying to cite different examples. And then Krishna himself was trying to pacify Maharaja Yudhisthira. In Mahabharata, this whole context is being described more elaborately. Maharaja Yudhisthira was very much aggrieved while remembering the whole history of the Mahabharata war. And he was saying, because of me Abhimanyu was killed. And because of me the 5 sons of Draupadi were killed. And because of me, because of my greed, so many other people were killed. And Dronacharya was killed. And how he was killed? He was killed because I said that Ashwatthama is dead. And of course I said the elephant Ashwatthama. But I did say it in a very, low voice. Why all of a sudden would I say to Dronacharya, Ashwatthama the elephant is killed? Definitely there was a crookedness in these words, and he was so remorseful. And then he says that even Bhishma was killed. And he was remembering this again and again and again. And this is all because of me. And then Vyasadeva started pacifying him and saying, please don't be so aggrieved, because it's the destiny. Don't attribute too much importance to your own actions. Because everyone, Vyasadeva was saying that everyone was born with certain destiny. And they just, it's not you. You didn't kill them. And Vyasadeva started telling some ancient history. It's actually very interesting, because usually when we read Mahabharata, they never tell you instructions directly. They start telling that, some time ago Janaka Maharaj was there, and he was also aggrieved. And then his minister started pacifying. And this way of instructing people we are circumventing their ego. If we start telling somebody directly some instructions, the ego will revolt, because ego is not very eager to hear some direct instructions. But if you describe the instructions which was given to King Janaka, then you can hear it without the resistance of false ego. It's much easier to understand. You hear, and at the same time you hear the instruction and you understand the instructions. So Vyasadeva started telling this story about King Janaka and his minister, how his minister was trying to pacify King Janaka. And basically King Janaka asked, what to do if we lose our near and dear ones. And, his minister started saying, his name was Asta, started saying, don't worry, it just happens. The only problem which we have is not grief. The only problem which we have is not happiness. The only problem which we have is our reaction to grief and happiness. Our emotions which we attribute to something, to the causes of grief and happiness. And basically the instruction of Vyasadeva was, don't grieve. And don't get into much happiness. When we're happy, we think, oh, I'm so powerful. And when something bad comes, we think, oh, I'm so useless. But it's not this. It's actually very interesting what Vyasadeva told him. Vyasadeva told him that either in grief or in happiness, the only thing which you should ask yourself, who I am. You should ask, why this happens to me? Why did it happen to me? You should ask, who I am. Who I am. Just coming back to this point, I'm the spirit soul. I'm the soul. Because we shouldn't allow our consciousness to be absorbed in all these events of our life too much. We should always remember, I am the spirit soul, and my prime relationship, foremost relationship is with Krishna. Not just, allow this turmoil of the events of our life to completely carry away our mind. And he said, just, the life is completely mysterious. Vyasadeva said to Maharaj Yudhisthira, you're grieving, but the life is mysterious. There's, the Ayurvedic physicians, they also have disease. Even though they follow very carefully all the diet and everything, they eat very properly, they still get disease. And all their relatives get disease and die. And then rich people, they also die. And they also, and he says sometimes rich people, they don't have children, and poor people, they have so many children, and the life is so topsy-turvy. It's always, something is wrong in this life. Don't grieve. There is no need to grieve. The only thing which you should ask again and again and again, who I am, where I am going. So that was the attempt. And then Narada Muni was telling some strange story to Maharaj Yudhisthira. Still he was not pacified. Then ultimately Arjuna kind of, said to Krishna, you try. It didn't work, Vyasadeva tried, didn't work. Narada Muni tried, didn't work. And Krishna very diligently, started saying, why are you grieving? Everyone is dying. So many kings died. So many kings, everyone is dying. Why are you grieving? Stop grieving. And didn't work. So what happened next? Ultimately, Maharaj Yudhisthira, he agreed to ascend to the throne. And, there was royal procession, and Krishna was there, and all the Pandavas was there, and there was very, glorious procession. They entered Hastinapur, and at that time, among all the citizens who were greeting Maharaj Yudhisthira, there was one Rakshasa. The name of this Rakshasa was Charvaka. and he was dressed in sannyas clothes, and he had his danda. And when Maharaja Yudhisthira was proceeding there, after being victorious in the war and to be ascended to the throne, all of a sudden this Charvaka, he stepped forward. And he looked very sternly at Maharaja Yudhisthira and he said, "On behalf of all these brahmanas which are there, I'm speaking not on myself, I'm speaking on behalf of all these brahmanas, and I curse you, you wretched Maharaja Yudhisthira, because you killed all your relatives, and you think you will be happy by killing all your relatives." And Maharaja Yudhisthira was completely shocked. And he said, "Oh, please don't curse me." And then there was a great turmoil. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Gaurita ki jai. Maharaja Yudhisthira was completely, because he was thinking about this, and now, some sannyasi is coming forward and saying, "I am speaking on behalf of all the brahmanas, I am cursing you on behalf of all the brahmanas." And then all brahmanas started, there was great uproar, and they said, "We didn't empower this guy to curse you. Don't listen to him, he's a Rakshasa, he is a demon, he's a friend of Duryodhana," and they all cursed this Rakshasa, and this Rakshasa fell dead right there. But it's definitely not a very auspicious event, during your coronation ceremony. So that added had some emotional impact on Maharaja Yudhisthira. So he wanted to die. He said, "I will starve to death. I will sit down and I will emaciate myself till I die, and this is the only way." And he even said, "Bhima will be the next emperor. When I die, let Bhima rule." So, and what happens then, it's very interesting, because one morning when Maharaja Yudhisthira was determined, he started fasting, because Vyasadeva told him, if you want to, eradicate your sins, if you want to wash away the sins, you just fast. Just fast for a few days and then all the sins will be gone. So Maharaja Yudhisthira started fasting, and one morning he came to Krishna. And he saw Krishna and he started greeting Krishna, and he said, "Krishna, how are you? How was your night? And you are the Lord of the universe. What are you doing?" And Krishna was sitting there in his sofa, bedecked with jewels and gold. And he didn't react. For a long time, Maharaja Yudhisthira was asking him some questions, and Krishna was still silent, and his eyes were closed. And ultimately, Maharaja Yudhisthira realized that he's in a meditation. And then after a long time, Krishna opened his eyes. And at that moment, Maharaja Yudhisthira asked, "Can I please know what you were meditating about? The whole universe is meditating upon you. What you were meditating about? There must be something really serious happening somewhere in the universe. You were so absorbed." And he said to him, "I saw that your hairs were standing on end and tears were flowing from your eyes. What was happening? If I'm allowed to know what was happening within your heart, what was there, please reveal me this secret." And Krishna said, "I was meditating about Bhishma. How this old man is lying on the bed of arrows, and how he is thinking about me. Because I was reciprocating with his thoughts. He's thinking about me, how I cannot think about him. Because he's thinking about me, I'm constantly thinking about him. I cannot finish thinking about him. because he's so intensely thinking about me. And of course, there is a great lesson in this particular episode, because, who would like that God would think about him? Does anyone would like that God would sometimes think about us? It would be nice, isn't it? To be sure. And here, of course, it is being explained the way. If we see our own psychology in life, we always want other people to think about us. Wife always wants that husband would think about her. And husband wants, or sometimes he doesn't want that wife would think about him. But definitely wife always wants that husband. And there is this game of life that we want others to think about us. Somehow or other we want that we would be in the center of other people's consciousness. All these people who are, all the stars and everyone, they somehow or other, they feel great enjoyment and they force others to think about them. But here is the secret being revealed by Krishna himself. If we want others to think about us, we should think about them. We should care about them. And especially here, this is a very dramatic episode and occurrence. Bhishma Dev is laying in the bed of arrows, and when you're so pained and when you're so, in the last moment of your life, you probably have a lot of self-pity. When we get little disease, we have this self-pity. Why did it happen to me? I was chanting Krishna's name sometimes. Hare Krishna, Krishna. Why did it happen to me? Why did this disease come to me? Why did it happen to me? Out of all, Bhishma had probably more rights to think like this. Why did it happen to me? How did I deserve such an end? Laying on the bed of arrows at the end of such a pure life. I'm a Mahajan. Bhishma could have thought like this. I'm Mahajan. Why did it happen to me? No, this grateful heart was thinking about Krishna. How great Krishna is. And therefore he didn't even feel pain. His consciousness was completely absorbed in Krishna. And Krishna, in this episode, he's thinking about me. How can I not think about him? There is a very interesting part of this, or the purport to this. In Jaiva Dharma of Bhakti Vijnana Thakur, towards the end, the question is asked, among the devotee and God, who should take the initiative? Who should start loving whom first? The particular question which was asked about Purvarag. Purvarag is the love and separation before meeting. And the question was asked, who should experience Purvarag, or the longing for meeting first? Is it God or the devotee? And the answer was given that in normal relationship, in man and woman relationship, the initiative usually comes from the man. The man, he initiates relationship. Basically, the question, very important question which is asked, who initiates the relationship? And Bhakti Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes there that in normal relationship, usually it's men who initiates relationship, because men are very aggressive and they look at somebody and say, okay, she's nice, okay, let me think about her. But he said, but in a spiritual relationship, it's woman who initiates the relationship, or it's a devotee who initiates the relationship. Actually, the initiative should come from us. And Krishna will reciprocate. There is no doubt about it. We should start first thinking about him. He will reciprocate to the thinking about him. And here we see this is being depicted in this story, how Bhishma Dev is thinking about Krishna, and how Krishna is saying to Maharaj Yudhisthira, he's always thinking about me, and I cannot stop thinking about him. And Krishna himself says, let's go see him. Let's go see him. And Maharaj Yudhisthira says, oh, that's a great idea. Let's go see him. So here we see very interesting dynamic, as Srila Prabhupada describes here, is that Krishna actually has this plan and idea from the very beginning. Because he is Ishvara, he is the super soul in the hearts of everyone. He didn't allow Maharaj Yudhisthira to be pacified by all these endeavors which were there. And as Prabhupada says, Krishna is called here Adbhuta Karmana, somebody who performs unbelievable, very wonderful feats. And the wonderful feat which he performed in this particular episode is that he didn't allow Maharaj Yudhisthira to be pacified, to be free from grief. Despite him speaking, despite Vyasadeva speaking, despite Narada Muni was speaking, he didn't allow to be pacified from grief, or to be relieved from grief, because again he wanted Bhishma Dev to do this particular thing, to glorify Bhishma Dev. And of course the main idea here is that how magnanimous Krishna is, how kind he is, and how his reciprocation is overwhelming. He just here wants to glorify Bhishma Dev, so that everyone in the world would read this and would glorify Bhishma Dev, how he was able to pacify Maharaj Yudhisthira and how great devotee he was. There is always, we know, this competition between the Lord and the devotee. The devotee wants to glorify the Lord sincerely from the heart. He wants to glorify the Lord, and the Lord wants to glorify the devotee. There is no need to try to, glorify yourself or whatever, do anything yourself. Everything is being done, is being accomplished just by thinking about Krishna. The only thing which we should do, which we should learn in this life, there is the only thing which we should learn, how to think about Krishna with gratitude and ultimately with love. First the gratitude should be there. We are by nature very ungrateful. By nature we always dissatisfied, and we always demand, and we always come to God and say, I don't have this and this and this. Why you didn't give it to me? Why? Why you're so cruel? Why you didn't? Perhaps you don't exist. It's actually the greatest offense. There is no more offense than to say somebody, you don't exist. When somebody, when we want to offend somebody, we just don't look at him as if he doesn't exist. Somebody is there and he's not there. So when people are not satisfied, ungrateful people are not satisfied, they just come to God and say, I think you don't exist. No. Cannot be. You know, it's unbelievable how people can maintain this attitude, how they, especially scientists. Scientists, the most intelligent people. And scientists, they study, you know, life, and they study all this mechanism of the universe. And then, you know, after studying all these intricacies of life and everything, their end conclusion is that it all happened by chance. Somehow or other, it all happened by chance. This is this ungrateful nature of human being. God doesn't exist. No way, God doesn't exist. So the main point, of course, of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is how to remember about the Lord. In which mood? With gratitude, how to remember about the Lord. And for that, we should always, you know, Bhishma Dev, he shows how to remember about the Lord. How he remembers about the Lord. We may not understand how the Lord is merciful to us. But when Bhishma Dev is remembering about the Lord, he remembers how the Lord is merciful to Arjuna. How much love Krishna had to Arjuna, because for the sake of Arjuna, he was ready to break his own word. For the sake of Arjuna, because of his love to Arjuna, and because of his love to Bhishma, he was ready to break his word. So basically, the main lesson of this is that we should always try to remember how the Lord was kind toward others by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, by reading other stories, by meditating how his kindness manifested towards others. And then ultimately we will be able to understand how the Lord is kind to us. Because again, you know, due to our nature, due to our psychology, it's sometimes difficult to understand. First of all, it's difficult to understand how the mercy of the Lord manifests in sometimes very cruel events of our life and very difficult events of our life. So, but this meditation is there, and it should start. This is how Bhagavatam explains this. It should start from meditating how the Lord is extremely kind and merciful towards others. And then when this program is there, when this lens is there, when we see the mercy of the Lord, how it's overwhelming mercy of the Lord, then we may have a glimpse, you know, actually He's also merciful to me too. And whatever I thought maybe not mercy is actually mercy. That's what we learn. You know, here what we see, Krishna, even though externally, you know, what he did to Bhishma, and ultimately that's what he did to Bhishma, was very cruel. But internally, he just, the idea behind this was just to glorify Bhishma. That even in this condition, he is thinking about me. And he's taking everyone, you know, he's taking Maharaj Yudhisthira, he's arranging this whole intricate and difficult story, including the Rakshasa Charvaka, you know, this whole story, only for this reason. He's only waiting when Maharaj Yudhisthira tells him, let's go to Bhishma Dev and let's see Bhishma Dev, to glorify his devotee before the end of his life. So, but again, the idea is to think and meditate how God is merciful towards others, towards whatever little devotion others have, and then apply it to our own life. For sure God is merciful towards me too. He will be merciful. Somehow or other, anyway, I thought about him for maybe 2 minutes without no stop, you know, without breaking. At least I tried. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Anyway, that's the whole idea about this. We should try to think about the Lord. The onus is on us. The initiative should come from us. He will think about us, no doubt about it. Proportionately. As much as we think about Him, He will think about us. So there is no loss in these attempts. Again and again, try to think about Him and try to think how merciful He is, how kind He is, how magnanimous He is in His dealings. And, avoid self-pity. Self-pity and all these other feelings which actually distract us from thinking about the Lord with love are very unproductive. So don't get into this weakness of self-pity and grief and this and that. Lord is there. It is said, Srila Sanatana Goswami, he says that the first thing which we should do in the morning, while waking up, we should chant the verse from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Jayati Janani Vasodevaki Janmavada Yadubara Parishatsvaya Dorbirasya Nadharma Stira Chara Vrijinagnach Susmitam Sri Mukhena Vrajapura Vanikanam Vardayan Kamadevam. And the whole meaning of this verse is that Krishna is present now. The pastimes of Krishna are going on, and you are part of these pastimes. The pastimes of Krishna is not something in the past, it's not some stories, some histories. Krishna is there in your life. This is the reminder which we should have every day of our life and every minute of our life. Krishna is alive and He is reciprocating with us. Jayati Janani Vasodevaki Janmavada. He is there. Jayati is in present tense. Let this Krishna, who is known as the son of Devaki, be glorious, because he is always establishing Dharma through his devotees. He is always enlivening both moving and non-moving living entities. And he is always ready to give the love. And Vardayan Kamadeva, he is always ready to increase the love. It all depends on you, on your mood. Krishna will reciprocate. So if you remind this and you remember that Lord is there and His reciprocation is guaranteed according to our mood and relationship to Him, then ultimately there will be success. And then ultimately we will be able to properly hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Because again, this whole canto is describing to us in which mood or frame of mind we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So if this is the mood or understanding, how merciful is the Lord, how extremely merciful He is towards me, how personal He is towards me, as much as towards everyone else, and how grateful I should be towards Him, then we will be able to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and Vardayan Kamadevam, ultimately the love of God will take over our heart, will overwhelm our heart. Instead of being sucharpita, overwhelmed by grief, we will be premarpita. We will be overwhelmed by love. So that's a little. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. I was just wondering, I've also heard that as much as we think of Prabhupada, he thinks of us. So is it best to try and meditate on Prabhupada or Krishna?
It's not different. Whoever is connected with Krishna, it is explained by Srila Jiva Goswami in his commentary to this verse, definition verse of Anyabhilasita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanabritam Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam. When Srila Jiva Goswami is commenting on this verse, he says, Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam, we should try to serve or to do something favorable or be favorable towards Krishna. When we say Krishna, it includes his pure devotees, his entourage. So there is no difference. There is absolutely no difference, because while thinking about Prabhupada, we will think about Krishna. And while thinking about Krishna, we will think about Prabhupada. Because how did we get Krishna? We got it because of him. No difference.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's a question you've been asked many times, as I have many times over this how actually to meditate on Krishna. Like, let's say during chanting, if I try to meditate on some form, it usually takes me away from hearing. I just imagine some form. I mean, if I don't, I just focus on hearing, then it's kind of impersonal, like chanting the Om, and then it takes away form.
The meditation in Bhakti Yoga very much depends on the emotion which you experience. We don't engage ourselves in this sort of neutral, impersonal meditation when we just concentrate the mind. Our means or our lens for concentrating the mind on Krishna is emotion. And the different verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, they have certain emotional content. And by reading these verses or remembering these verses, we may, if we have the key towards these verses, we can unlock these verses and understand what emotion is being expressed in these verses. And by having this emotion and chanting Krishna's holy name, we meditate on him with this emotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is what is being described in Bhajana Rahasya Bhakti Vijnana Thakur. Bhakti Vijnana Thakur is starting from the third chapter of Bhajana Rahasya. The first, well, even second chapter is there, but mostly third chapter onwards. He gives different verses from Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures, mostly from Srimad Bhagavatam, which are the help or aid for meditating while chanting Hare Krishna. Because this whole Bhajana Rahasya is his guide how to chant Hare Krishna. And the idea behind this that you chant Hare Krishna, not while remembering these verses, but coming into the mood of these verses. Every verse is containing certain idea, and this idea is like a tuner. It tunes up your mind in a certain way. And when the mind is tuned in this spiritual way by the means of this verse, then you chant Hare Krishna, and your mind is tuned properly, and then your chanting will reach God. And then after some time, the radio of our mind is a little strange, and it becomes again untuned, and there's some noises there. So tune it again, the proper wavelength. And then again, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is at least how it is explained.
Krishna, very nicely explained about who has to be the initiator of relationship according to Jayadharani. I remember in one class you were explaining that Guru is the feminine aspect and the disciple is the masculine. So how does this? Is there any relation to that?
Well, it's, yeah. In this relationship between guru and disciple, definitely the initiative should come from the disciple. There is no doubt about it. Guru will reciprocate. And if he sees the endeavors of the disciple, he will definitely reciprocate with his endeavors. Well, that's, when I was telling about this, that's from a different angle of view. But if we take the, ordinary description, disciple is the servant, guru is the master, so guru is the masculine aspect, no doubt about it. And therefore the initiative should come from the disciple, the initiative should come from there. The reciprocation will come. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains why initiative in the spiritual relationship should come from the feminine aspect, because he said because the women they're more capable of love, their love is more strong, therefore the initiative comes from there. And we can see even in the relationship between the guru and disciple, sometimes the feelings of disciple are more strong than the feelings of the guru. Guru definitely feels obliged to reciprocate with the feelings of the disciple, but the initiative should come from the disciple, no doubt about it.
Thank you, Maharaj. I have one question. You mentioned intelligence. That scientists are intelligent people, and we
intelligent but ungrateful.
But from time to time we hear this, that I hear this, that scientists are, and these people are intelligent. So I'm wondering, you have spiritual intelligence and you have material intelligence. Is there, are these things distinctly different? Because I understand that with material intelligence, like scientists are, they have this intelligence, but they reject God, the notion of God. So those material intelligence, does it really matter? Is it
No, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
So therefore, real intelligence then is not material intelligence.
No.
Please, can you explain this so I can understand? Because I understand that spiritual intelligence is the real intelligence, because you understand the things of the spirit, also the things of matter. So
this is actually explained by Srila Prabhupada in his comment to the prayer of Queen Kunti. Tatha paramahamsanam muninam amalatmanam bhakti yoga vidhanartham katham pashyema histriya. Queen Kunti says that in this verse that you're coming to give bhakti yoga to all these great people, very pure people. What can we poor women can do? And Srila Prabhupada says there that supposedly women are less intelligent, or sometimes he says this, but he actually turns the whole explanation of whole verse 180 degrees, and he says it's actually those who have humble intelligence or like women, they are actually more intelligent than those who seem or who think that they are very intelligent. Prabhupada says that all these so-called pure people, they are actually mental speculators, and those who have humble heart, they have real intelligence. So the spiritual intelligence and material intelligence are indeed different entities. And from material point of view, sometimes behavior of spiritually intelligent people is totally unintelligible. They cannot even understand why spiritually inclined people are. Because material intelligence means material calculation, how you calculate, how to adopt or adjust the material circumstances. And spiritual intelligence, you understand there is the higher power, and you surrender to the higher power. Material intelligence is the means to lord it over material nature. That's how scientists use it, and it's a brilliant tool given to them by God, how to reject God and deny God and try to adjust this life. Spiritual intelligence is the means or intelligence which helps you to surrender to God.
Thank you.
Okay, last.
The Charva community that you mentioned, is that
No. This Rakshasa Charvaka is not Charvaka Muni. It's just his friend. They both happen to be Charvakas. Actually, Krishna, he's trying to pacify Maharaja Yudhisthira when this episode happens, when Rakshasa Charvaka curses Maharaja Yudhisthira. Krishna tells his story. He says this Charvaka Rakshasa was doing austerities in Badrinath. While doing austerities, he ultimately was successful, and Lord Shiva came to him. And he asked the benediction, let me be invincible. And Lord Shiva said, okay, you will be invincible, nobody will be able to kill you. There is only one exception. If you will offend Brahmanas, then by the curse of Brahmanas you will be killed. And this Rakshasa Charvaka, he started doing this. And actually it was said by Lord Shiva, you will be killed because you will offend Brahmanas, and you will offend Brahmanas because you will become a friend of Duryodhana. So he became a friend of Duryodhana. He was so offended by Maharaj Yudhisthira, he couldn't contain himself. So he lied openly, and he invoked the curse of Brahmanas. It's a different process, but similar mentality. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.